We have got a fantastic final block of panels. We are hitting the end of the runway and we are going to sprint to the end. Starting with, our next panel. Oh, I have the clicker. Our next panel will look at the legacy plans for the 2028 Los Angeles Games and the role of the Olympic and Paralympic movement in building healthy children and communities through sports. A common theme here, right? To help us guide it through it all, please welcome the Vice President of Impact for LA 28, Erikk Aldridge, and Chief of Sport and Athlete Services for the U.S. Olympic and Paralympic Committee, Rocky Harris. Oh, he's got his own crowd there, his fan club. Thank you both for joining us. Just a reminder that we are going to put some questions in the app. So if you have questions as the conversation goes on, don't hesitate to put them in the app there, because we will do 20 of my questions, and then I will turn it over to you guys. All right, so let's start with both you. 30,000 feet up, big swing. What opportunities does the LA 28 Games present? Erikk and Rocky both.
Well, first and foremost, what a great venue to have this conversation.
Yeah.
First off, with the two-time Olympian, Julie Foudy.
Thank you, Erikk.
As a person who was born and raised in Los Angeles, in 1984, I was 16 years old and had a chance to experience firsthand the power of the Olympic Games as a ball boy at the Great Western Forum for Team USA basketball.
No way.
And they had a pretty good guy on that team in '84, Michael Jordan. He was not bad at basketball, right? But fast forward to where we are in 28, and we have such a unique and dynamic opportunity. One, first time that the Paralympics will be taking place in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And so while we've had 3 Olympiads, the Paralympics really gives us a chance to take a look at adaptive sports and raise the level for participation by all members of our community in this wonderful sports ecosystem. Now, besides that, we are definitely going to lean into making sport more accessible throughout the region. Also, a big part of the conversation over the last couple of days, how can we get young people involved in Olympic and Paralympic sport? Yep. So taking a look at that engagement. And then last but not least, and I've had so many sidebar conversations with people about how can we strengthen the ecosystem as it relates to coaches and administrators in sport. We all know that sport is at its greatest when coaches are at their strongest.
Yeah.
So we're going to be leaning to all of that in 2028.
I'd love to hear that. Rocky?
I guess I'll follow that. So I wasn't a ball boy in LA, but I was in my living room in Tempe, Arizona, and it inspired me. And I think that that's one thing that we look at is this is a celebration of sport in America. And I think that we have to build up to that and not just make it about the 6 weeks that we're there. It also is a unifier, and I think our country right now is as split as it's ever been. And the one thing that we find is that Team USA is the one unifier. It doesn't matter what party you're from, where you're from in the country, and so we can use sport as both an inspiration and a way to unify our country.
Yeah, and the other thing that we've seen always with the Olympics is you take this moment and it can become a movement, right? And in terms of legacy for youth specifically, Erikk and Rocky, both to you, what are the legacy plans for youth specifically coming out of those 28 games?
Well, I think for us, we have a chance to start that legacy now, right? We don't need to wait until the games are over to start leaning in and having action around those items that I talked about, right? How can we, work with our local municipalities throughout the region? We have a wonderful partnership with the City of LA, Department of Recreation and Parks, and this Play LA program. I just got some numbers the other day, 95,000 unduplicated registered kids in that Play LA program, and that's going to grow to, I think our projections are around 1 million new kids registered for that program in the city of Los Angeles. So for us, it's going to be important to use the time that we have before to really focus on how we want to make that impact in sports.
Right.
Yeah, and I think that, we have 28 Olympic sports in Paris, 22 Paralympic sports, and most Americans only know about, have played 4 or 5 maybe. And so I think for us, it's introducing sport to kids and giving them that diversity of sport and really introducing it to kids who don't have access to sport. And the best way I feel to do that is through our national governing bodies. They live up, like they're living the sport, and many sports are already there. NGBs are there trying to activate it through the partnerships that we have in place. So I think for us, I do agree the legacy needs to start now, not afterwards, and we're seeing a lot of NGBs activate there because of that.
Speaking of that legacy starting now, y'all were given $160 million commitment for moving the games back, of course, 4 years. So what have you done with that money to date? And then how will you continue to expand this effort in the youth sports space?
Yeah, so we're very fortunate. For those of you who are not familiar, the IOC passed through $160 million that will go directly to the city of Los Angeles to uplift the Play LA sports program. And what that is an opportunity for all kids in the city of LA to participate at their local park for either free or as little as $10. And so these are not just your regular sports, these are judo and fencing and para sports. So helping to stand up the first ever public adaptive sport program. So those are the things that are being produced from the $160 million, in addition to adding safe sport components to the coaches that are a part of that program. But the thing I'm most excited about, Julie, is I got a number the other day. In 2019, when we started the program, there were 20 parks and 80 kids that participated in the judo program. Fast forward to a report I got last week, 80 parks and 1,200 participants in the judo program.
Really?
So a lot of talk about how do we get young people involved in these other activities. It's exposure, it's opportunity, it's creating equitable opportunities for them to participate and just eliminating the barriers. And we know one of the number one barriers is cost.
What other barriers do you see? Obviously, when we talk about cost being the primary one, but if you take away that cost barrier and you have an audience full of people who can help you get to kids, right? What are some of the other barriers you're seeing that don't get the kids to these programs that you're offering for free?
Yeah, so when you're working, in underserved communities or marginalized members of the community, everything from transportation to enough coaches, right? Those are things that have been clearly identified as things that, keep young people away from the field of play. The other thing is, I think it's important to recognize is that, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, and I'm not exactly sure who Gen Alpha is, but I heard that from our insights and analytics team that there's a Gen Alpha out there.
Oh, I did not know about the Gen Alpha.
Yeah,
I need to get on that.
I think they're green. I don't know. But the fact of the matter, we're competing, right? We're competing for their time. We're competing for their interest. And so I think all of us who believe in the power of sport and the virtues of sport, we have to do more than ever to capture the imagination of young people that want to participate in sport.
Yeah, and Rocky, you probably understand that well, overseeing all of the sports, chief of sport. I mean, what a title that is. So when you look at, and we were talking about it backstage, this idea that when a kid maybe isn't successful in one sport, how do we encourage them to get out of that silo and maybe try another sport? There's so many different sports,
Yes.
that they could be doing, but often kids aren't redirected in that way.
Yeah, and I think, one example for this room is that utilizing your facilities and really leveraging them to introduce more than one sport. So if you have a pool, you should introduce artistic swimming, you should introduce water polo, triathlon, and give the kids access to all those sports through that venue. And a lot of times I see many sport venues focus on one sport or two sports and really try to get multi-sport at every venue in America. And I think if we had partnerships like that with the cities, with Parks and Rec, and facilities, really bringing and introducing kids to all sports, because we know that swimming, most kids leave in 12 and 13 years old, and we need to introduce them to other sports. So for us, it's about the multi-sport environment, giving kids access and exposure to every sport, and then making sure the venues are there and prepared to be able to facilitate that.
It's interesting because Kyle Martino, a friend of mine in soccer, is building these multi-sport courts Sports, right, that takes a basketball court with his over-under play initiative, takes a basketball court, and then if you don't want to play basketball, you just pop up these goals, right? And all of a sudden it converts into this soccer space as well. So
that's exactly right. My dad was a PE teacher and a football and track coach, and with PEs being removed, physical education being removed from schools, right now it's more important to introduce kids to multiple sports. And I think every chance we get, we got to expose them to the sports. And we know it's better for injury prevention. We know it's better for mental health. We know that if you get burned out in a sport early, you're not going to continue to compete into your adulthood. And so we have to make it a priority as a country.
Can we let the coaches know that it should be a priority as well? Because that's the thing I run against. It's like, in theory, it sounds great. I'm like, to my kids who are 14 and 16, as I've been saying, I'm like, yes, we're going to play volleyball, we're going to do soccer, we're going to do it all. You're going to play basketball, you're also going to play soccer, you're going to play football. And then you get to the reality of it when it comes to about high school, and it just like smacks them in the face. And I'm like, oh, and you get all this guilt from coaches of, no, you got to be here all these practices every day, 365 days a year. So I think that's another level. Can y'all work on that in this room? That'd be great.
Yeah,
thank you.
Please.
I'm trusting you're going to get on that. Erikk, we have seen and talked about here over the last 2 days the power of legacy with LA 84, right? And that foundation and the $93 million they got in the endowment from the surplus from the 84 games. So my question to you is, any plans to do the same with the upcoming LA and Salt Lake City games?
Well, the key thing, number one.
Surplus.
Hey. I have the good fortune to be able to work with the LA 84 Foundation on a number of levels. Prior to coming to LA 28, I ran a Boys and Girls Club for 6 years. I also have a nonprofit in my hometown of Inglewood, California, and have had a chance to see the great work of the 84 Foundation through a number of different lenses. And so, yes, the hope is to be able to, take a look at what that will look like after the 28 games. Definitely a different landscape when you think about what all we have to do to deliver the games. When you think about security and mobility, all those things are so much different, as well as the economics of the games, quite different. But with that said, I think, our goal is one, to again, make sure that we take advantage of the moment and the spotlight right now, and then two, put us in a position to have that legacy, which will be a human legacy of all the things that we've done in the programs and the ideas and the concepts that we can deliver to our program partners, and then think about, hey, wouldn't it be great if we could get to a point and be able to give away money? Yeah. Sounds good.
And give back to all these great entities that are doing this fine work, right? It's not like you have to reinvent the wheel in a sense. You could give to these great entities. So that's good to hear. Rocky, I know you've previously said in interviews that we need to rethink our sports system. And I know we don't have a couple days and some wine for this one, because this needs a little bit of wine, I think.
It does.
But what did you mean by that? And give us the quick version of that,
Yeah,
because
and I'll try my best to. So I started my career, I started a foundation in college to have inner city youth sports. And then I went to the NFL and worked in the NFL, and then I worked in college athletics, and then I've been in the movement. And I just saw all these disconnected pieces that didn't really work together. And I think our system in America is the envy of the world because of the NCAA system, but it's outdated. And we're seeing that now with the need for evolution and revolution in a lot of ways. With the commission here, but also they're looking at NCAA sports, and we know that there's major issues in NCAA sports all the way down. And the reason why is we don't really have a strategy that matches everything up at every level and makes sure that we're all talking together. We don't have thought leaders together thinking about how everything connects. It's very easy to see how high school connects to college, and in our life, how college connects to the games and the Team USA. But we really have not really put together a strategy to make sure that we're focused on what's good for the athlete at every step in their journey. And we've done this through, obviously, the ADM model, but we're starting to do this now with the USOPC and really look at what's an athlete's journey. And I think as a country, we really need to double down on making sure that every piece of the system works. Because what works here is the entrepreneurship, what's happened here to grow. But the monetization of sport and the commercialization of sport, now we're seeing is backfiring. It helped it grow really quickly and rapidly, and that put resources back into sport, but now we're seeing the unintended consequences of that. So I think we just have to take a total look at the sport ecosystem, from private to nonprofit, grassroots sport all the way up to elite sport, and really make sure that we have a clear strategy, because right now we don't.
Yeah, so clearly a really simple solution
Simple.
there, huh?
Let's do it.
Oh
Yeah,
my
right here.
gosh.
This group can actually help do this.
I know. Well,
advance
you've
it.
got
Yeah.
a lot of people convening
Yeah.
here for that
Yeah.
purpose alone. But when you look at the magnitude of that and the layers to that and the nuance required in that, if you did have a magic wand and you could say, okay, these are like the top 2, 3 things I would immediately go after, what would you do?
Yeah, I think first of all, I would make sure that every youth participant is under the umbrella of the national governing bodies, because we spent the last 5 years going through massive reform. And I have 3 daughters, and I feel safe and secure sending my daughters through the national governing body space, because we've set up requirements and standards that no one else in the world has set up. And so what I want is to make sure that everybody's playing by the same rules, every coach is Safe Sport certified, that the kids that go into sport are having fun and protected and safe. And I think for us to do that, we have to have a youth platform that requires every youth coach, every sport director, everybody involved in sport to go through the same requirements that national governing bodies are requiring.
And right now, it could be different for basketball, it could be different for soccer.
And even private versus community versus national governing bodies. We should have one collective grassroots strategy for sport.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of NGBs, they have said they wanted to be rewarded, incentivized if they can get that grassroots part of it, of that equation right, and they're showing, positive results, positive data for them doing that. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's about resources, right? And that's what we've been talking about a lot. But the model's been proven. I mean, you look at USA Hockey, I know Pat's here, they have 650,000 youth playing hockey players, right? They've grown the sport at a very extreme level, and I think that we have to look at what exists right now. There's models within the movement that are already working, and I think that that's what we have to look at. And I would actually look at how do we invest in national governing bodies? How do we invest in the movement to be able to do that? Because there's only so much money to go around, and quite frankly, our role at the USOPC should be to focus on Team USA, because right now they don't even have the resources they need, because we're spread out and trying to do everything for everybody. And the more that we help our national governing bodies by investing in them, which we do right now, the more that they can focus on grassroots sports. I know when I was the CEO of USA Triathlon, we spent the majority of our time focused on growing the game, growing the sport. I had a team that focused on high performance, and our entire organization was wrapped around growing sport. And I think what you're seeing in college athletics, and we actually impacted this legislation, is they're now looking at sports as a vertical instead of a horizontal system, where it used to be football and men's basketball and everything else. Well, now every sport within the NCAA system is going to be looked at as a vertical. How do we make sure that the experts in this sport are a part of growing the sport at every level? So I think that that's one of the pathways there, is to look at it as a vertical within sport, and then you bring it across and have it more of a horizontal interaction between sport, instead of just putting them all under one umbrella and treating them the same, because they're much different, they're all unique, and we need to think about them in that way.
Okay, and I don't mean to put any pressure on you too, but to get that done, like, what's the time frame for that? Because my kids are 14 and 16, and this needs to happen quickly.
It's interesting, in talking to everyone and both of you. I'm on the other side of it. I have 2 kids, both who are college graduates, both who play Division I athletics, and this stuff changes so fast. It's like technology, right? And so I think it's really important for us to listen here, right? When Rocky talks about, having the national governing bodies, oversee the sport and create a system, we have to stop pushing young people out of sport. Right? Just because they're not a professional player doesn't mean they can't enjoy the quality of life that sport brings, that they can't enjoy the virtues that sports brings to bear. And so, specifically, to answer your question, which is a tough one, like, how do we do this massive lift together? I think it is together. I think it's really taking a look at all of us checking our egos a little bit at the door and saying, we need trained coaches. We need to stop pushing kids out. Coaches need to start communicating around schedules. There's no one that I've ever met at a high level from a coaching standpoint that prefers a single focused athlete, that's just critical. It's critical.
And it takes a lot of courage, because you're disrupting systems, right? And you're disrupting this power structure that has existed so that people can gain from it. And I think we're at a point where those people with the courage have to step up and be like, this ain't working.
That's exactly right.
Right? And we've got to bust it up and disrupt it so that we can fix it. So,
Amen.
amen to that.
And
Let's
I
go.
think, too, I mean,
Let's go.
What do we want our legacy to be, though? What do we want our legacy to be, right? Do we
Yeah.
want our legacy to be that we're working for these businesses, these structures that exist, and protecting a structure? Or do we want our legacy to be that we're impacting society through sport? And I think if we want that to be our legacy, then that changes the focus, right? From building up an organization, whether it's small, and I saw this when I worked in soccer, actually. When I worked in Houston Dynamo, we were trying to bring youth soccer and an academy and we had all the private clubs mad at us because they thought we were going to take money away from them. Yeah. And when we introduced them that we're actually here to grow the sport for you, that we're focused on development of athletes, that we're not here to take your business away. But I did see that happen because everyone was protecting their own spaces. And I think we just have to open ourselves up. Why are we here? Right? Why are we here? And we're not here for that. Right? And I think that if we just all say that and own it, and then it's about the kids, it's about the health of our community, and we all believe sport does a lot more than that. Mental health, physical health.
Keep that right there
exactly
in front of you, right? Like that's the perspective you need. All right, questions. Let's go there. And you still can put them in your app. We have 10 minutes for questions. So we're going to start from Abby. Thank you, Miguel. How are youth involved in creating legacy plans? Do they have voice in this work? Great question.
Yeah, very, very good question. So one of the things that we've done at LA 28, we've created a youth council. It was established in 2018, and it's made up of young people who were nominated by a variety of different stakeholders throughout the community, both from the sports sector, but also grassroots nonprofit organizations. They convene on a quarterly basis, and they give us really critical information about a lot of things, what we should be doing in regards to fan engagement, in regards to youth sports, in regards to local hiring and job opportunities. So that's what we're doing at LA 28, and that's something that we're really excited about, and that is our stakeholder engagement. It has to be a shared opportunity, the 2028 games. It can't just be about the organizing committee. It has to be about the community.
Great to hear, Erikk. Okay, Brandon Ebert asked, after watching the Olympics, what do you want our youth to feel? Is it I want to participate in the Olympics? Is it I want to do my best in anything I do? My own Olympics, if you will. Is it pride in the U.S.? Something else? It's good, too. It's for both of you.
All the above. I think that, but I do think it's, if we look at the impact that we want to make through the games, it's multi-layered, right? But I do think that if we can get kids moving, if we can, like I know, and this is my LA 84 experiences. I remember when Edwin Moses won that race. My dad was a track coach. It was a Sunday night, I think. I was 7 years old at the time, a little younger, just a little bit. And I went outside and set cones up outside and started trying to hurdle. I wasn't good. And I knew immediately, like after that 10 minutes, I wasn't going to be Edwin Moses. But it did inspire me to do more, and always want to do just reach a little bit further and a little bit more. And when the great thing about the games, I think, is NBC's done a terrific job of telling stories, telling the athlete's story, getting us to care about an athlete. And what I heard earlier is it's how do we make that connection more than just every 4 years? So one thing we're working on at the USOPC, our marketing engagement team, is a flame-to-flame strategy. How do we make sure that our athletes are front and center year-round for all the time, not just every 2 years or every 4 years? And so that's something that we're working on. But I do think it's, for us, if we get people moving, I'm happy about that.
Yeah, I mean, we want people to watch the games and experience the games and be in Los Angeles and just feel that same feeling that, so many Angelinos felt in '84. I mean, people really felt great about the games and the pride in our city. And I think, that's the feeling that we want to have people have in 28.
Hey, Rocky, don't give up on that hurdle dream.
Because I did run hurdles in high school. It wasn't
Edwin,
pretty, but
he was like 4'11".
That's what you said earlier. That's
but
what
now
you said
he's
earlier.
6'5".
I don't know where that happened, but what did he say he was? 5'6", and 5'7" his junior year. I was like, wait a second. What happened there? All right, next question. How will LA 28 drive community growth to additional cities outside of California during the buildup and after the 28 games?
Yeah, so I think for us, it's interesting. We have some really, I would say, informative conversations with the IOC and others around kind of level setting, one, that California and just Los Angeles is a country in of itself, right? So just putting our arms around our stakeholders
Yeah.
in the LA region and in California is quite a heavy task. And just to be informative for the group, every Olympic committee has a host city. So the city of Los Angeles, not the county of Los Angeles, the city of Los Angeles is specifically the host city. So there's some things that the city is responsible for that no other part of the region is responsible for. But with that said, we are going to have this platform. We're going to be very visible. So you'll start to see us, be a part of conversations and rollouts and programs and things like this where it will arrow to the games to talk about, how can we, utilize the athletes to push these narratives, to push the conversation in these areas of focus, coaches, accessible play, and then participation in Olympic and Paralympic sports.
Selfishly, I'm adding a question into the queue.
Yeah.
Based on that, how does the fact that we have World Cup coming, LA is a venue, of course, it's not just Los Angeles, but 2026. Sure. And then, of course, the new news that we're going to bid U.S. Soccer on 2027, right? Which I imagine LA would be part of that, too. Does that help in the build-up? Does it take away some of the pizzazz of it? What do you think?
No, I mean, I think, LA, we pride ourselves as, the sports capital of the world. And, we are going to continue, I think, to host Super Bowls and World Series and All-Star games, et cetera. And we're excited to welcome all those people. In addition, it's going to give us an opportunity to do a lot of learning as well, leading up to 28.
Yeah, that's true.
When you talk about mobility, when you talk about community engagement, how will it affect our stakeholders, how those things will affect those specific sports, we'll be able to draft off of some of that, and in many cases partner with those federations to talk about those sports as well. So I think it's great, and it's a great opportunity for us.
That is so weird that I just asked the very question they asked.
Nice
That
job,
is
Travis.
weird. The only difference, this
psychic.
just came up, I did not know. So basically what I asked, right, Summer Games in 28, 30 or 34 being in Salt Lake, it is in Salt Lake, right, we know that. What will be the most important thing to communicate to the world in hosting these mega events?
I think that sport matters, and that sport matters to us as a society. And that's why we've quite frankly, Team USA is dominated in sports, because sport has mattered. It's part of our culture. It's who we are. Yeah. And I think it just reiterates that as, again, kids get back on iPads and all the stuff that they do. We need to reinvigorate the love for sport in this country. And we feel like that these events are going to help us do that, be a platform for that.
Especially post-pandemic, right?
Exactly.
When we're locked into screens. Okay, is that it, or do we have a last question? I think we're good. Okay, I just want to say, with all that you have on your plate, with all that we're doing in this space, I thank you both for that. And I know that this room is here to help you with that. And also knowing that youth at the core of what we're doing specifically, and making that such a part of the legacy is going to be so important to so much in this country. So thanks for your hand in all of that. Appreciate you guys spending the time with us. Erikk and Rocky.